Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to Resume Essentials, Streamlining Applicant Screening for Agencies. I'm Danny Rosenthal. I'm the Director of Community at Enginehire. Our guest today is Briana Murphy. She's the owner of Your Nanny Resume. Just before we get started, we have a list of many other webinars coming up. So August 22nd, we have Alejandra from Laloon Sitters coming to talk about to talk about social media. We have Adam Griggs of JNAP, and he's coming to talk about the risk and reward in agency ownership, all insurance stuff. I'm sure it's way more fun than it sounds. And Kelly Garris is coming on to talk about National Nanny Recognition Week. But without further ado, here is Briana Murphy.
Hello. All right, let me minimize this. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again for having me. Super excited to talk to you guys about what I eat, live, and breathe, resumes. So as Danny said, we're going to be talking about resume essentials, but I wanted to do a bit of a twist. So more so geared towards streamlining your applicant process, because I know a lot of agencies that I've worked with, talked with in the past, have people who send through resumes and they tell me how awful they look and just how that can make your entire onboarding process or even just the application process really not a good time. So my goal today is to really walk through what a resume is, what it should look like, what it should have on there. If you guys have templates that you use, or if you have templates that you want to use later on down the line, if you need help with any of those, just understanding what all that means. So to jump right in, all right. Hold on. There we go. I'm Briana. I am the founder of Your Nanny Resume. I've been around since 2018. I help agencies build strong candidates, and I help nannies land their dream role. That is my lovely tagline. I am a certified resume writing professional and career coach, and a former nanny. That's how this all came about. A little backstory: I, again, used to be a nanny of about 10 years, and I did a lot of my finding my jobs and things like that through care.com. A lot of it was just freelance. I didn't work with any agencies at the time, and I was taken advantage of on more occasions than one. And I thought to myself, I was like, wow, I wonder how many other childcare providers are going through the same things. And I'm a very solution-based person. So I'm like, okay, what can I do to save the day? And originally, Your Nanny Resume was supposed to be an agency. And then I was like, oh no, I kind of feel like I have something else to offer. And everybody would come to me to find jobs back in the day. They still do now, but more so back in the day, like, hey, can you do my resume? Things like that. And I was like, oh my God, I don't think anybody in this industry even has a resume. And this was, again, years ago. And even when I was a child care provider, I was like, I didn't even have one. So that's kind of where the idea came about. And then here we are years later, and we are thriving. So that's a little bit about me. So just to walk through today's agenda, we're going to be talking about understanding the resume, just the resume basics, childcare resumes versus standard resumes, understanding ATS, which is also known as an applicant tracking system, curating the ideal template for your candidates, resume do's and don'ts, some honorable mentions, and then if there's time for some Q&A if you guys have any questions. So just to jump right in, our objective for today is to enhance your recruitment process by leveraging high quality resumes to streamline and optimize your candidate screening. So to understand the resume, so I know this is really silly. You're probably like, why do we need to know what a resume is? Well, I think understanding the document itself will help you understand what needs to be on it, which will then help you understand what to look for. So a resume, the actual definition is a resume is a concise summary of a person's qualifications and experiences for a job. If you were to ask me what a resume is, it's a professional document which encompasses all of your achievements throughout whatever industry that it is you're in. A lot of people have different definitions for it, but again, I think it's important to understand what a resume is, because then you know what goes on it, right? So then to speak to what should be on a resume, in my professional opinion, from my training and all, the standard, right? So your contact information, your qualification summary, which can also be, some people call it a branding statement, some people call it an objective, but qualification summary is the same. Your experience, of course, then skills, specialized skills, which we'll delve into a bit, education and relevant hobbies and certifications. So just to speak to the specialized skills really quick, that I've seen really work well on all resumes, of course, but like newborn care specialists or like doulas or things like that, because the standard amount of skills for a resume is 12. And I like to do a mix of both. So there's hard skills, which are skills that you obtained from that particular job. For example, all the references I'll use today are childcare related. So changing a diaper is a hard skill, whereas soft skills speak to your personal attributes. So like communication, things like that. Specialized skills are like baby-led weaning and certain things along those lines. So like newborn care specialists have so many of those. So instead of just putting the standard 12 and trying to encompass all that, a newborn care specialist might be doing, I create a whole separate section for, again, it's more so just like a spin on your hard skills. So to just speak to, again, what you really know how to do, or what you've even been certified in. For example, first aid and CPR can be looked at as a hard skill. I personally like it to be in your certification section, but things like that. So that's what a specialized skill is. So now that we understand the resume, I wanted to talk about understanding a childcare resume versus a standard resume. So I am also in corporate. Outside of this, I do marketing, and I've been in corporate pretty much all my life as well. So I've worked with enough recruiters and enough people to understand there is a difference, right? So while both of these resumes serve to highlight your qualifications and experiences, there are key differences between the two. So just some that came off the top of my head. So for childcare, length doesn't matter, right? And I know that that's one of those questions that we all have, like how long should a childcare resume be? But honestly, I've seen them go up to 7. I've seen them go up to 8 pages. There's a lot of times where I tell people maybe we should switch and maybe do a portfolio of some sort. But, for childcare, length doesn't really matter. Whereas for a standard resume, 1 to 2 pages at most, and 2 pages, even going on to 3 sometimes, is more so like an executive resume on the corporate side. Then another difference between the two, a childcare resume tells more of a story. It tells more about you. I think it speaks a little bit more to your soft skills than a standard resume is more achievement based, like a skill based resume. So I always make the comparison, like a standard resume, they want to know how much money you can make for them, and a childcare resume, they want to know how you can nurture their child. Very different, right? Then another thing that's different, a childcare resume gives more detail. So you have more leeway to tell more about yourself, whereas a standard resume is very clean and concise. It's very much, here's what I did, here's how much money I made the company, but you can tell an employer in childcare that you like to take hikes and that you like to cook and you like to do those things because that speaks to you as a person, but it makes sense because you're nurturing a child. You hiking and cooking and you're trying to be a front desk person, it doesn't do anything for anybody, right? So why is there a difference in the first place? Well, for one, they're 2 completely different industries, but people, again, want to know more about you in childcare. I tell people all the time, you can't overshare when it comes to a childcare resume. And that's me personally, again, with my training and things. And even having been a nanny, I've had families want to know like everything about me, from ancestry.com, even things that, along those lines. So I feel like there is a difference between the two, and understanding that you have more leeway with a childcare resume if you're somebody who's in charge of making the templates, or if you're an agency and you're working with these families and they're telling you what they're looking for, you can add certain sections onto a resume. And we'll talk about like what ATS looks for and things like that. But you have a lot of freedom and flexibility on a childcare resume versus a standard. So then diving into, going from understanding the difference between the two, now understanding ATS. And again, ATS is an applicant tracking system. So what is it overall? It is a software that's used by companies to manage the hiring process. I say to think of it as a digital filing cabinet for resumes and applications. I know some of the agencies that I've worked with in the past have used some applicant tracking systems. Not sure if anybody here today uses them, but I think that they're great. But there is definitely a method to the madness. So why it's used to collect and sort resumes, automating tasks. So for example, in the event some of you maybe aren't familiar with ATS, this is the platform that will send out the email and tell you like, hey, we're not moving forward with your application. It streamlines the process altogether. And then, of course, tracking your candidate progress. So essentially, ATS just helps companies streamline the recruitment process. So this is, again, something that I know that some agencies use. I don't know if everybody uses it, but the reason why we want to understand ATS is because we want to make sure that we can crack the code. So understanding ATS extended. So cracking the code to ATS is actually pretty simple. You're keeping it simple, right? So you have that clear layout, standard headings, a consistent format. Keywords are going to be your best friend. So identifying target terms from the job description, strategically place them and consider a skill-based resume. So I'll talk about my Tinder method for a second. So I don't know if any of you guys follow me on social media, but I came up with this thing called the Tinder method because as a woman who is dated, I noticed that dating and a job search are almost like one and the same. So if you think about Tinder, Hinge, whatever dating profile you're familiar with, you create a profile of yourself, right? And on that profile, let's just say you talk about how you love to travel, you're looking for a long distance relationship, and you like dogs. So essentially, you're looking for somebody with those same interests, right? So you're swiping through, and you find Chad, who loves to travel, who likes dogs and is looking for a long distance relationship, and Chad is pretty handsome. So of course you swipe right and it's a match. It's the same concept for ATS, right? So what ATS does is it's taking everything that you're asking for. As an agency, you put out an ad, and you're looking for a tender-hearted nanny with 10 plus years of experience, who is willing to travel, is passport ready, has a clean driving record, all of the above, right? So as a nanny or as a resume writer myself, I'm going to take those keywords and put them on my resume. Now, it depends on where you want to put them. You can put them in the skills section. That's why I said a skill-based resume. The skill-based format is technically the same. You just add more skills throughout your resume. Like where there would be a tagline or a profession at the top, you can use that and put like 3 keywords at the top if you want. So that's kind of the difference. But yeah, that pretty much explains that. And then for some ATS tips, so where it says, a clear layout and standard headings, there is a code to crack there as well. So your name should be 20 to 24 in size. Your subheadings should be 11 to 14 in size. And then the body should be 10 to 12. My sweet spot has been 11. I've been using 11 for pretty much all the resumes I've done, at least for the body, and it's been working fine. But again, totally up to you. And then as far as fonts and things, no special fonts, right? I know a lot of people like Comic Sans. I know there's like Wingdings and all these other fun fonts. Garamond, Times New Roman, Arial are your favorite. I mean, are your best friends. Now, there are, however, other fonts that you can use that look similar to these, and that's totally fine as well. I had a list that I can, provide if anybody has questions at the end, but there are different fonts you can use, but just keep it simple. I love Times New Roman. I think that's something that we've all used in our time. But if you see a resume or if you're creating a template, you want to keep those fonts in mind. You don't want to use any other fonts. It's just for a professional look. It's just the general rule of thumb, honestly. And then moving on to then creating the ideal template, right? So we just talked about ATS and understanding how to create what should be on your resume for ATS, right? So when you're creating that template for anybody, for either for yourself or for candidates or anything of the sort, again, going back to that clear and organized structure. What that means is exactly what it says. So if you think about, whenever I think of the standard layout of a resume, it always starts with your contact information, then it goes down to your profession. Underneath your profession is your tagline. Underneath that can be education, depending on where you want to put it. But if not, it goes to experience. And then your skills are usually on maybe the left or right-hand side, depending on what you want. So there's a standard for that. And you want to keep it that way. Now, this does not mean that you can't add your own sections. I do this all the time. For example, I have clients who have a background. So I've noticed that a lot of agencies want more. They don't care just for your childcare, experience, but they want to know what you did maybe 10 years ago. The standard is about 15 years to go back on a resume now. So if, at the 10-year mark, you were a server or something along those lines, and agencies want to know that, that's something you could put on your resume, but maybe not highlighted in the experience section per se, but you can create an additional section called additional experience or customer service experience or whichever, and list it there. So you, as long as it has a standard format, you're pretty much good to go. But you know, that doesn't, again, it doesn't mean you can't add something on there, because you will notice a lot of these childcare providers have so much information, and I'm like, oh, we have to put this on here, but how are we going to do it? So I just create different sections, and it usually works out. Next, then we have visual appeal. So consistent formatting, heading and subheading. Like I mentioned before, what the heading and subheading, what that font should look like, the font size. But when I say consistent formatting, a lot of people, and we'll again delve into this in a bit as well, the lines even have to match up. And I learned that from a recruiter on the corporate side of things. A while ago, I had a resume that had like lines that were like, one was this long, and then one was this long, and then one was this long. And she was like, it's not appealing to the eye, and the way that your eye has to follow a resume, I don't want to look like like a crazy person. So I had to make sure that everything was all the same. And then I became a professional resume writer and was like, oh, I see why this is important, right? So making sure it's consistent across the board. Even it's kind of even hard to do it with skills sometimes, because sometimes your skills can be like 2 words hyphenated, and then one could be 1 word. So you got to play around with it. Again, general rule of thumb, it's not the end of the world if maybe one sentence is shorter than the other, but I'll get into what I kind of do now to avoid that. And then last but not least, to create that ideal template, you want some customization options. And we'll get into a little bit more of what those are in the honorable mention section. But adding a photo, again, there's a lot of people who have issues with adding a photo. It's totally optional. I know there's some agencies that want it for your profile and things like that, but on your actual resume, totally optional. But a lot of people think it may encourage discrimination or age bias, which is absolutely very fair. And with that, I just say they're going to see you at the interview anyway. And in the event they have any kind of feelings towards what you look like or anything of the sort, or your age, that's just not the job for you. But that's totally optional. And then you can add a review at the bottom. So what I usually do is have my clients send me 1 letter of recommendation or something. And then from there, I'll just take a snippet of it, one that I think really encompasses who this person is, and I'll just put it at the bottom. I've noticed that alleviates people from asking for references without a job offer on the table. And if you've been following me for a while, you know I hate talking about references if there is no job offer, which again, we will delve into shortly. But just a note here at the bottom, not all resumes are made equal. Some have a storytelling format and some have a standard format. So to talk about that for a second, if you look at a standard resume, right, in the experience section, you have the job title, the family name, the age of the children upon hire, the duration, month and year, and then the location, right? And then underneath that, you have a few bullet points. I don't do that anymore. And the reason why I don't do that is because it's redundant. No matter what a childcare provider has done and what age group they've worked with, you come across a lot of the same things across the board. And I actually had a client once, this was maybe like last year, I think, because I just changed the way I do resumes. And she was like, you know, I like the resume and all, but it just looks like you said that I do all of the same things under every job title. And I was like, I did. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, what else am I supposed to say? Like, even as a childcare provider, there was nothing different for me to say. So then I thought to myself, and I don't know how new this would be. I learned how to do this for standard resumes about 1.5 years ago, but there's this part where underneath all of that information, the job title and wherever, where you write a little blurb, usually written in first person, present tense or past tense, and you just use the 1 sentence to speak to your achievements, and then you dive into your bullet points. And I was like, well, what if instead of using bullet points and saying the same thing, I write like a 5-paragraph essay in first person, present tense or past tense, depending on where the nanny currently is in their career, and like write about what they've done. So it's more like a storytelling format rather than just bullet points. So I tried it out on a few clients. I was like, if they hate it, I'll redo it, but hopefully they like it, because resumes take a lot of time. And I got no complaints at all. Thus far, even the agencies they send it to, I've gotten none. I don't know if any of you have seen my current work, but it's working out really well. And even the families that they send it to really like it as well. Because I don't know if you guys use this guide, you know, for the agencies that are in here, when you are interviewing a candidate, your resume can serve as a guide for your interview, right? So, you know, you start off with their contact information, and then usually when you tell someone to tell you about themselves, it's kind of like the objective. It's like what the objective says is what I'm pretty much going to pull from and maybe add a little bit more meat and potatoes. And then you're going to look at my experience and be like, oh, so tell me about this job and this job. And that, I think the format of the way that I do it now just gives more. And again, I think it's important to, in this industry, you can give so much, right? Especially on this professional document. So why not tell you my professional story? Again, written properly. It's usually like 5 paragraphs I try to do. And I take, it's almost like an extra spin on your objective or branding statement as well. And it avoids redundancy. None of it is redundant because I get to tell a story about each family and the things that they like to do, and it goes over really well. So again, that's kind of the way that I do it. But if a client or whoever wants the standard bullets, that's fine as well. It's just harder to avoid the redundancy that way. All right, and then resume do's and don'ts. So as you can see here at the top, where it says references should never be on a resume. Now, I know I'm talking to a few agencies here today that may feel differently, but this is a hill that I'm willing to die on. And here's why. And again, this comes from personal preference, but also professional experience. When I was looking for a job, I never had references available upon request on my resume or my references on my resume. But there were employers that seemed like they were going to hire me, right? So they were like, oh, we'd love to talk to your references and then we'll get back to you. I exhausted my references to the point where when it was time for me to actually get hired, none of them wanted to talk to anybody. They were like, we love you. We've done more than enough for you, but like, you know, we're real people. And I had to start thinking, I'm like, well, even though I contact my references first and I'm like, hey, when are you available to have this call or whichever, it's a lot. You know, they could be on vacation. They could have a death in the family. They could simply just not have the time. They could have kids. Their kids are driving them crazy. They're, you know, car trouble, life, right? And then your references aren't answering the phone. And now that kind of makes you look bad. And you're like, oh, well, imagine if you avoided that altogether. And then once granted the job offer, you can then offer your references. And here's why this makes sense. I don't know anybody under the sun that's going to offer up a reference that's going to say something bad about them. If you know that you did a good job and you ended on good terms and whichever, all of my references say wonderful things about me, and I wouldn't choose any, because I mean, let's be real, we've all had positions where maybe things didn't end that well. I wouldn't choose those. I would choose the people that would say great things. So what's the difference? So if you already know that I'm a strong candidate, we've gone through the interview process, you love my credentials, more than likely we had a trial day maybe, or maybe before or after, who knows, and you need to talk to people to, again, confirm everything that you already see, that's fine, but it shouldn't matter. So that's how I feel about references. But however, for the document side of things, a lot of templates that I've seen from agencies or even just resumes in general have this little thing at the bottom where it says references available upon request. Not only is that an inaccurate statement because it shouldn't be accurate, because I shouldn't give them to you upon request, I should give them to you upon a job offer, again, personal preference. Also, it's what purpose does it serve on a professional document? And I think a lot of people put it there as like just a random thought, like, oh, that goes there. But I think a lot of people are also afraid of white space. Do not be afraid of white space. If this is a document that is supposed to house my achievements, if it ends right here, then that's where it ends and the rest of the page is white. If we have to, you know, move around the template a little bit and put things in different places, then fine. But for the most part, it doesn't need to be there. So if it's on any of your templates, I would encourage you to take it off. That's something we've done away with as resume writers. I think even before I started writing resumes professionally. So that's my take on that. And then in addition to that, what shouldn't be on a resume, graduation dates. For one, nobody's asking you, hey, can I see your diploma? It's irrelevant. But in addition to that, it might encourage age bias. So it's just something that it's not relevant. Like I went to Greenwich High School. I graduated in 2012. Are you asking me for my diploma? Because I don't even know where it is. You know, like things like that. So it's not relevant. It's not something that needs to be on there. If it's a preference of yours as an agency, for sure, but it's not something that's needed. Your full address as well. There, I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but there was a point in time where it was like a sex trafficking scheme to like create fake jobs on LinkedIn and try to get people's personal information. And I've come across so many clients of mine who have their full address on there. it's only meant to be there for proximity purposes. So your city, state, and zip code is fine. If you live in 30030 and you have to commute to 30341, I know that that's a 20-minute commute. Fine. That's it. Marital status, believe it or not, I've seen it. It's just not relevant. And then your GPA, if it's under 3.4. Now, I don't, 3.4 isn't horrible. But again, if you want to speak to your achievements and who you are as a professional, you really want to show off your best self. I tell this story all the time, but I did my best friend's resume, and he's like the smartest guy I know, a whole bunch of credentials, went to Morehouse. I call him like the mayor of his city. And he sends me his resume to redo, and his GPA is like 2.7, and he has it on his resume. And I was like, why would you ever put this on here? And he's just like, oh, I didn't even know. And I was like, yeah, no. Like, this isn't, not only is this bad, but it's just not something that, is relevant. So keep it off if it's under 3.4. And then gender. Now, when I say gender, I know that we are in times where, people want to put their pronouns and stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do think that, again, it's just not relevant to put on. Now, if you do want to, add your gender, or again, add your pronouns rather, that's fine. But again, just know, it's not something that needs to be on there. And then things to look out for. Grammar, it's very normal to miss a comma, misspell a word, but a lot of people look at that as, okay, well, if this is your professional document that you're sending me, and I have to trust you to teach my 2-year-old how to read and write, and you can't even do this, like, it makes people think. And people do overthink in this industry because, again, you're not going to work and filing papers. This is a life in your hands. So a lot of people look at everything, right? Again, redundancy. It's hard in this industry because, again, a lot of people work with a lot of the same age group. So you're doing a lot of the same things. I can't tell you how many times I've changed a diaper and administered medicine upon request and traveled with families. But it's like, if you can find ways around it, like I did, like kind of drafting that essay rather, it works well. And then again, consistency, making sure all those lines match up like I have here at the bottom, making sure that each section has all the information, right? Because there's clients who, it's a very collaborative process with me. So when you sign up for services, you get a very in-depth email of what I need. And I have clients who will send me all of their information, but forget the month of which their position, the duration of time that they had. So if it's, I need month and year, they'll just send me the month. And I'm like, I like that it was in February, but February of what? So you kind of have to remind people sometimes, because this is a lot of information that people don't think about on a daily basis. And that's literally why I'm still in business, because nobody wants to sit here and think about all the stuff that they've done. What time frame was this to what time frame was that? It's a lot, right? So just looking for that consistency across the board is super duper helpful. Sorry. And then last but not least, honorable mentions. So these are things that, again, will not affect ATS, but will help your resume stand out, because as a resume writer, in addition to having worked with agencies, recruiters, you look at resumes all day long. And when you look at the same format all day long, it's like, oh my God. And luckily we have things like ATS, but even after ATS, you still have to look at the resume. So adding a tagline. I put a tagline example here at the bottom. I love taglines. For example, on a childcare resume, like a standard one, nurturing young minds one day at a time. It's like a selling point that, again, speaks to your personal attributes. It's a spin-off of what's pretty much going to be throughout your resume, but it's just something nice, like a little razzle dazzle, adding a review, like I had mentioned before, adding that to the footer of your resume. If you have that one handy, it doesn't even have to be from a letter of recommendation or something written. It can even be a text, because sometimes people, like, I love to pour into people. So if you're one of those parents and you send lovely text messages, it could even be that. Again, adding a photo, volunteer experience of any kind. It just, again, speaks to you as a person. And I think that, again, childcare resumes more so speak to your personal attributes than it speaks to your hard skills. Like, if you're a nanny, we know that you've probably changed a diaper. We know that you've probably, did sleep training and all of that. But, like, who are you as a person? Because your energy around my child's energy has to make sense, right? So volunteer experience, I think, is huge. And then adding a pop of color. So there was a point in time where you could kind of use any color you wanted. And now it's like green, blue, and gray. Those are the standard colors. I wouldn't do anything else. I know that there are childcare providers who like to make this their business and they have logos and certain things. What I advise for them to do is to make the logo some sort of color like that. If you want to add it to your resume, that's fine, because they want to base the color of their resume off of their logo. If your logo is glitter purple and pink and blue, no, but maybe I'll take the blue from it and add it. It's just standard colors now. That's pretty much like the color scheme that works the best. And I believe that covers that for honorable mentions. And again, photos are optional, but in the event they have a professional photo, I've had people send me peace sign kissy faces. I've had people send me blurry Instagram filter photos. It has to be a professional headshot. I also like when they're outside. Those are also really nice photos, depending on what the photo looks like. What I would avoid, and again, just based on my professional experience, is photos with kids. Only because not everybody wants their child to be shown on social media or anywhere. So if it's on your resume and it's being sent to so many people, that's a picture of you and somebody's child, So I think just to avoid that altogether, just a photo of yourself. And that concludes my presentation. I didn't know if I can open it up now to see if anybody had any questions. Happy to answer anything that you guys have.
Yeah. If you have any questions, just throw it in the chat and I can definitely read it. Or if you'd like to, you can also just jump on in and ask a question. We've navigated that before. Briana, I have a question for you, maybe first though.
For sure.
So how is it that I think a lot of candidates often don't know where they actually stand out. And is there a way that you've figured out like how to like lead that process for them to know like what makes them actually a great candidate?
Yes. So the first thing I do is in that screening process after they book with me, one of the questions is any verbiage that makes you stand out, right? And they always get confused. And I'm like, okay, well, have you worked with children with special needs? That doesn't make you an average nanny. That means you have extra patience. What have you done with them? Like I give them examples and then they're like, oh, well, I did, do this and do this. So it kind of starts off with something small. Then I think it's more so understanding what stands out. Because I think even as a former childcare provider, even myself, I'm like, well, what have I done? But I'm like, working with twins is like big, So I was like, oh, I've worked with twins and I literally like help them with speech therapy and things like that. So starting off, with something like that, just kind of, I like to pass the baton to them and see what they come up with. And at this point, I kind of just have a mind to know what stands out and how and where to put it, and whichever. It's a very interesting process, but that's pretty much how I do it. Just giving them little examples, because everything seems so normal to us in this industry. Like, oh, of course we did that, of course we did that, but actually a lot of it isn't normal. It actually does help you stand out.
Fantastic, thank you. Here's a question. What's your experience using AI? Do you have any maybe using for creating resumes or something to make your job easier?
AI has become my bestest friend, but I will say, so I don't like to cheat. So I have like writing is my thing. So I only use AI for grammar for me, because again, even now I have about like 10 resumes in the vault that need to be done. So looking at all of those every day, I'm like, I had to have missed a comma. I did not spell that correctly, so I use it for that. But on the professional side in marketing, I've used it to do everything. So I know that if I were to say, rewrite this to sound more professional, or draft a blurb that encompasses this childcare provider's, achievements, it can absolutely do that. But I only use it for grammar, mainly, or if I feel like I'm having writer's block and I'm like, I don't know how to make this objective stand out, I'll just say draft, a qualification summary with this kind of information and go from there. So I use it, for those things.
Great. Portia asks, how would you respond to a nanny who has applied to the agency, but based on their poor resume, you don't want to hire them? I want them to know that's the reason we don't want to move forward, so they can reflect on that for future jobs.
So as a professional, I would just tell them that. And I know that sounds very like vague, but I've had a lot of people come to me and tell me that they didn't get a job because their resume, wasn't done or wasn't up to par. So they need my assistance. So I think being honest with them, because resume writing is not for everybody. And I feel like, again, a lot of people don't even know what their achievements are because, again, everything in this industry is so we just do it. We don't think about what that categorizes us as or how important it is. But I genuinely would just let them know, like, unfortunately, due to the current state of your resume, that's I can't bring you on at this time. But if you don't mind, seeking professional help, you can even use me as a resource. Agencies do pass people on to me all the time. And you want to reapply, I would love to revisit this at a later time. And then from there, now they know, okay, my resume sucks. And let me go find somebody, because a lot of people still to this day don't even think they need one. So people are still thinking they don't need a resume. We need to tell them when their resume isn't up to par as well.
I know there's other questions, but I just wanted to jump on top of that one and ask one with that. It would be like, when people send a resume, should they send the Word document? Should they send the PDF? Should they
Only
send
PDF.
both?
Only your PDF, and it's mainly just for viewing purposes. It's not for anything else. But if you send the Word version of your resume to anybody can tweak it and send it off and do whatever with it, right? So you want to send the PDF. It should only be the PDF version of your resume. And again, it's for viewing. Your viewing pleasure. You can look at it on a phone and it's going to look the same. You can look at it on a tablet, computer. So it's just easier that way.
Briana, here's the hill that you want to die on. Actually, in agreement with you.
I knew it.
But it's an agreement. So Jane says 100% agree with not providing references until there is a job offer. How to push back when people ask for references?
I say exactly that. So, here's the thing. Now, I meet people in the middle because I understand that you do need something, right? So if you have letters of recommendation, sure, right? That doesn't include contact information though, because sometimes people will put that, at the bottom. So, I'm happy to send, a letter of recommendation over for your viewing, but however, to not exhaust my references, I would prefer to, keep those until there's a job offer on the table. I hope you understand. And essentially, you're just setting a boundary. And boundary setting is uncomfortable. We all know that. But I, again, always say, if you can't set that simple of a boundary, and even if you're trying to meet them in the middle or not, and they don't want to work with you after that, then that just wasn't the job for you. Because again, as a employer, you've probably been a reference before. I've been a reference for people too, and I feel bad if I'm in the plane and somebody's calling me and they need a reference, and I'm like, oh, like, I'm sorry, I'm not available today, and now I'm messing things up for you. Whole time they just called me and they don't even want to hire you, or they choose the other candidate. So it's something that I would say, I'm happy to provide a letter of recommendation if you're open to that. But until there is an offer on the table, I don't provide references just to avoid exhausting them.
Fantastic. How do we present a career gap on a resume?
So there's a few ways you can do that. With my new storytelling way, because obviously this is going to be seen in the experience section, right? So I would explain it in the blurb, depending on what it is. If you had a career shift, if you had something going on with your family, but that's really what cover letters are for as well. So you can use, again, if you're using my current format, you can use that 5-paragraph blurb to explain what that was. But essentially, you want to explain that there was, whatever was going on is going on, and now you're back and whatever. There's different ways to write it, of course, just thinking off the top of my head. But your cover letter pretty much serves as that. Your cover letter is almost like a love letter to the company. Your cover letter should not just be a repeat of what's on your resume, but almost an extension of why, and a little bit more personal. And that is where you can use that as an opportunity. I'd like to speak to the gap in my resume from 2014 to 2015, during which time I was taking care of a sick relative. Since then, things have changed and I'm back and blah, blah, blah. So that's where you would use that.
Here's, I may have missed this info at the beginning, but do you create these resumes for your nannies based off the information received in their application and interview to present to families, or do you have the nannies do their resumes?
So I ask them for their information. So I create their resumes based off of what they send me. So they get this email from me that pretty much encompasses everything I need from them. So I'd let them know I need, the last 15 years of experience, if you have that or less, any certifications, the dates of your certifications. I send them all that I need. And then from there, I do their resume and I ask them if it's a general update or if we're applying for a specific job. I'm not a fan of doing general updates for resumes because your resume should be tailored to a specific job all the time. So I find the people who I do general updates for constantly come back and are like, oh, I need this tweaked for a job. And I'm like, I'm fine with doing it. But, that's why I prefer it to be for a specific job. Now, if it's for a specific role or even a specific industry, I feel like this is an industry where you can create a resume for just the industry and it still may make sense for the role. But even still, I want to make sure those keywords are on there because, again, agencies do use ATS, some of which I know. So I want to make sure that that's where it needs to be because, again, you booked me to do your resume and then you're sending it through and then God forbid you don't get picked. Now it's like, what's going on? And even with me in the past, it's usually a keyword issue. And I'm like, darn, Briana, like you knew that, maybe that was the keyword that you needed to add. So yeah, that's pretty much how the process goes. They get the whole shebang, the whole spiel of what I need, and then I go from there.
And I think I just want to mention for everyone that, Briana, when we've previously talked to each other, that you've helped other agencies do, like, since a lot of people use forms where they fill in, you've helped design that for other agencies so they're getting the information that they want from their nannies.
Forms, templates, and then I also do trainings to, like, your staff, whoever does like the recruiting and stuff. I do trainings to pretty much help what to look for. So something like this, but customized to your agency, and we'll walk through everything that everyone needs to look for because you hire a lot of people, but not everyone knows what to look for on a resume, or let alone care. Because again, this is not everybody's what they eat, sleep, and breathe like myself. So yeah.
And just for everyone's clarification as well, when you're talking about ATS, you're talking about the software that reads a resume on your behalf.
Yep.
And so you already can know this is a good client, this is not a good client before they ever even touch your desk.
But I will say ATS is your friend, but sometimes it's your enemy. Because, and again, this is why I like to train agencies, because you're trusting this software, right? But sometimes it's like one word that might make ATS say no. So sometimes you have to go back and filter through them yourself, and knowing what to look for can be helpful. Because let's just say you have a full-time nanny position, right? And you get 20 applicants and ATS only puts through 4. There's no way that the other group of people, all of them, didn't have the credentials, but their resume, it might have been the format or it might have been the keywords, but these are really good candidates, right? But ATS is telling you that only 4 of them are. So that's also something to look for. Like, that's another reason why it's not that I'm against AI, but that's why I don't really use it for that. Because I've put some stuff in AI and it sent me back a goat. And I'm like, that's not what I asked for. So, you gotta, when it comes to technology, I feel like you kind of have to know just as much as the computer knows.
Great. And so here's another one. We present applicant CVs to families online. Their online profile includes a video introduction. It's only 1 to 2 minutes. Customers like it, and the video makes a big difference in whether they want to connect with the candidate or see her in person. Do you have any experience with video introductions of nannies?
Yeah, several. So that is usually something that I'll guide them on what to say. But I think another like one up on that is also having like a social media that's tailored to your profession. There's a lot of nannies that I've worked with, and again, this is like their life. So they create social media, showing all the sensory stuff that they put together and showing how they play with kids and now, all their specialties. And it works out really well. So I do have experience with that. That is something that I usually tell people, here's what you should say, here's how you should say it. I don't know if you guys go in and edit the videos or how exactly that works, but I think from a marketing standpoint as well, as long as, they're well-spoken, you can hear them enough, and it's edited properly, I think it's honestly a great thing. I even think, going to speak to the photos and stuff, I even think having that is nice on your resume as well, because I like to put faces to the name, but I understand why people don't like it and why they don't do it.
And just speaking to your nanny resume, Adriana asks, about the templates, I believe, and says this would come with a sample template, correct?
So that is something I'm working on. So I'm happy to provide. And are you saying I would send you a sample template before you booked, or
Adriana, you could actually ask if you'd like. Just
just to
pop
make
up.
sure I understand what you're asking?
Hi. Yes, I was asking if we use your services as a nanny agency. We do know what to look for when it comes
Right.
to, picking things out of the nanny's information.
Right.
Would you be able to give us, you said something tailored to our agency and what we
yes.
can use, like you'd be able to give us a template that we can use if we
Oh,
go
yes.
through your service?
Yes.
So not before, of course, but after.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
I know Brianna's given us tons and tons of information.
I could talk about this all day.
Yeah, you live, sleep, and breathe it, I know. Does anybody else have any other questions? And while everybody is typing away, I'll just remind everyone that this recording will go up on our website just as soon as it's processed here. And then we also have a new podcast called How to Build a Nanny Agency, available wherever great podcasts are heard. And if you'd like to be on that, or even actually present a webinar, I know a lot of you have a wealth of knowledge. You can email me for both of those at danny@enginehire.ca if you'd like to, talk more and think about that. Here, last two questions. Can we have your contact details, Briana?
They're on the screen for you. I figured someone may ask, but yeah, they're on the screen. There's my website, my email, and that is also my work cell that I'm at your disposal. Again, this is what I do around the clock. So feel free to reach out whenever. I have pretty much open availability. So if you did want to schedule something, and we can have, a discovery call first to kind of talk about what the training may look like, or what the template or whichever may look like before, making a final decision. So, if you don't see it there on the screen, let me know, but I have it up there for you guys.
And the very last question is in regards to reference checks. That is something we require to vet the candidates and make sure they are real. How would you advise agencies on this process?
No, I think when agencies do it, it makes sense, right? But after that, I don't know what the process is for everyone, because everyone's process is different. So I think agencies contacting your references, totally fine. Because I've even had to do that, when in my most recent childcare endeavors, they had to reach out to my references. I think that's fine. But then this applicant has applied for, 3 jobs that she's, excelling at. So now all 3 families want to talk to her references. That's where things get a little, finicky, because then all 3 of them calling, who's actually going to hire her, or any of them going to hire her. So it's really circumstantial. But this is why, and actually one thing that I found with my services that's really, really helping nannies is because I say that you can provide a review from a previous employer, they're now asking people in advance for these letters. And these letters, I feel like, help alleviate all of the stress of the phone call and then not getting the job, and things are so all over the place. So maybe incorporating some sort of process with letters, I think. But again, you contacting the families is fine. But then when it goes to, we want to talk to her references before a job, I think just like agencies require you to have a W-2, you can't be paid under the table. Agencies require, certain things. You can also require them to give a job offer and then give your references. Whatever you guys, it's your business, so it's up to you. But that's what I may, recommend.
Well, Briana, thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful information.
Sure.
Everyone, you can contact her at Your Resume, yournannyresume.com, Briana at yournannyresume.info. And thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your time today. And then again, if you have any questions, I'm available pretty much around the clock. And thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.